Hi everyone, I'm Kayla, your Millennial Therapist in the Great Pacific Northwest, and today I'm going to be talking about the Netflix series Too Hot to Handle. So, fair warning, I've made some notes on my computer, so I'm going to be kind of glancing at those while I talk to you so that I can kind of keep my video going. But this is kind of my reaction as a therapist to this really cool series. There's some things that I'm going to critique about it, but there's also some really cool and positive things about it that I'm really excited to share with you and to show how this really integrates into what I do as a therapist. So let's get into it. So my initial thoughts on Too Hot to Handle was when I first actually came across it on Netflix, I was just looking for something to binge, and I read the description and thought, well, as a sex positive person and therapist, I don't know if I really want to watch something where they're telling people not to have sex for money, and that it's a bunch of, seemingly societal norm hot people that are just thrown into what else but a beach bungalow resort type place and told, well, you can't have sex and then you'll win, $100,000. But I decided to give it a chance, and it actually turned out to be a really interesting and cool show. I'm going to critique some things about it, but I think overall it ended up being a real positive show for me, and I think could be a positive experience for anybody else watching it too. One thing I also didn't want going into it was for there to be any shame around sex. That's something that I deal with a lot in my practice, is talking to people about shame and kind of our societal understanding of sex, and how, kind of like this show, we see these what we would consider societally as attractive bodies everywhere, like in magazines, in media. And so sex and sex culture is kind of thrown at us all the time. But then we're also told that, we shouldn't have sex until marriage. And a lot of parents don't talk to their kids about sex. And it's a very sex is kind of a shameful thing, and yet it's everywhere. So I didn't want this whole, well, you shouldn't have sex just to earn money, to be something around shame, like having sex is shameful, which I don't actually think that they did get to that. I think they handled it in a way that was more of you need to have some of these things to let some of your guards down. And I'll get into kind of how I think they were portraying the cast that was on the show. But really at the end of the day, it was, these kind of superficial relationships of just sex-based relationships versus having a healthier, deeper relationship where you can build it on trust and communication and vulnerability, and then add sex and intimacy as a part of that, which I was really happy to see that they even kind of used it as a reward system of, if you have a genuine connection, then you get to kiss somebody or you get to stay the night in this suite, even though they weren't supposed to have sex. But I don't think it was shamed. I think it was just used as a way to say, hey, let's do this experiment and see what would happen if you didn't have sex. Not necessarily you're a bad person because you are a very sexual person type thing. So those were kind of my initial thoughts going into it. And then, of course, watching it during quarantine, we're all thinking, hey, this is like everybody's sex life during quarantine. If you are single or dating or not, quarantined with your partner, everyone's sitting around not being able to have these physical relationships with people because we're all quarantined in our homes. So I thought that was really ironic, as this was very like quarantine bingeable show for us to watch, that we are all stuck at home not being able to have physical relationships unless you're quarantined with a partner. So I thought that was interesting how the show is kind of mirroring real life. So some of my critiques of the show, sorry, as I scroll down here, not enough representation, in my opinion. I think there could have been more, people of the LGBTQIA plus community. There was some kissing between two women, but I think they would probably say that they identify as being heterosexual, and it was more just a let's do this to get everybody back type thing. It is another kind of societal norm that, women kissing each other is not as big of a deal as if like two men were to have kissed on this show. But I think it would have been nice to see some people that, maybe there were some women that were into other women, or men that were into other men, or some bisexual people, or even some just like queer, non-binary people. But again, I know it's a dating show. I know it's Netflix. I don't really know they're a lot more progressive and kind of fluid in what they put on their streaming service anyway, versus if it was to be like on live televised TV. But still, I think it would have been nice to see a little bit more representation. I think race as a whole, they did okay. I mean, it was mostly like white and Black, which is great. I'm glad that they had Black people on the show. But I do think, race could have been a little bit more varied as well. Yeah, I think overall it was just really like handpicked people from Instagram that are heterosexual, young, again, very like societally driven norms of what is attractive. And that's something else I would have liked to see, was more like different shaped bodies, not just the like typical very thin, and for women like thin but big boobs, and men very like jacked, muscular men. I think it would have been nice to have like more real type people. But again, it's a TV show, and that's what usually drives the ratings. People want to see hot people on TV falling in love, or hot people that are horny and not having sex. So I guess that's what sells, but that is kind of my representation critique. And then one of these critiques is a little bit more around me as a therapist, that I initially didn't really like the shaming that Lana was having on kind of their previous behavior. I, again, realized it's a show and they were really trying to show the difference between like good behavior and bad behavior. But I think some of the comments she made really put a lot of them in this box of just being like hyper masculine or hyper feminine, and being like ditzy, or being kind of like the meathead, or I don't know, whatever. And just being like very sexually active, and that being like all that they wanted. And to me, as a therapist, I can see right through that. To me, all of that behavior are really just defense mechanisms. And, I see that a lot, and especially on reality TV. I mean, that's all that people show, is this kind of outer shell of who they are. And that's kind of the premise of the show, is to get people to let that wall down and to show their vulnerability and show more of who they are on the inside. But I didn't really like how Lana was phrasing some of the things and kind of shaming them for like who they were when they came in to the process of this show. you know, as a therapist, I like to treat people with compassion and kindness when they're in that state, and then, you know, bring them to some of these realizations that they came to later in the show. But again, it's a show, so kind of have to roll with it. But those are some of my critiques. Again, scrolling on my document. So some of my observations that are just kind of like, wonderings of interesting things, or kind of like want to know more about it. I did some research. I mean, there's videos and stuff out there of the cast answering questions and whatnot. So I've looked at some of that, but Lana is one of the biggest ones. And as we have learned in one of the Netflix videos that has come out with the cast and everyone, is that Lana is actually anal spelled backwards, which is very ironic that she is the one trying to keep everyone from having sex and creates all these rules when her literal name is a type of sex spelled backwards. So that's very interesting to me. And obviously someone that created this show is laughing in the background of this show for their clever idea of how to name their AI system after a type of sex. But I'm interested to know, like, one, why they chose to use an AI system instead of like an actual person host, like Chris Harrison from Bachelorette world. And I wonder like how the cast related differently to an AI system than an actual person. I know a lot of the articles that are coming out about the show have talked about Lana and, you know, being creepy, obviously, because it's like Big Brother, there's cameras everywhere, but I don't think that's Lana, that's just the show. Well, and Lana is part of the show too. And of course, Lana is not that smart, that it really is a person on the other side of things, kind of feeding Lana to say all these things, because that is definitely the smartest AI I've ever seen. And I don't know if we necessarily have that technology yet. And if we did, I don't think they would be using it on a reality TV show, but you know, it's fun to watch. So yeah, it was interesting having that piece of it. And of course, you know, maybe it's relating to a younger audience because it is AI and she's very sleek in this cone shape, and it just provides an interesting element to this show that she is, you know, this unseen person and yet a very prominent piece of the show, and like, you know, one of the stars of the show, really. So I just thought that she was interesting and would like to know like how that changed how people acted in the show, relating to her versus if they were to have had a host that was with them the whole time. So things that I thought were really positive were the workshops. The workshops were like as a therapist, you know, some of you may think the bread and butter and exciting parts of this are all the drama, which I love that too. Of course, I'm a fan of all these shows that I watch, and that's why I'm doing recaps for you on them. But the workshops were the best part. So there were 4 different workshops, one on learning trust and communication through bondage, which is a real type of bondage and a way to learn bondage. So, you know, go look that up if you want to learn more. And then there was the learning like emotional attunement and empathy through just viewing somebody's body language, which I thought was really interesting and cool. And then there was the women workshop and the men workshop, and both of those were focused on kind of seeing yourself more from the inside out instead of always, having that wall up again. And I thought they were amazing. I mean, this is really, these are real workshops that you could do in real life, and things that I would definitely suggest in tandem to therapy, or I could even, suggest some of those things as homework in therapy. But workshops are a cool way to do that because you're with a group of people, so you're experiencing it together, and it's a, very condensed, that's the word I was looking for, condensed way of doing this, because they're usually probably like an hour, maybe 2 to 3 hours. So it's a very condensed way of putting this all together and kind of going through this journey in a relatively short amount of time. Versus therapy is usually like 1 hour a week. But I thought those were really, really powerful things for them to do, and really were the pieces that helped push their personal growth and to learn more about themselves and how to be comfortable with themselves, and thus then to be comfortable being vulnerable in a relationship and kind of letting all those outer layers down and really showing somebody who you truly are, and your fears, your emotions. Fear is an emotion, but a lot of them had very real things in their past that they had to go through. And those were the reasons why they had these barriers built up. And so I think it really helped them understand their past and how that has contributed to where they are now, and how they can kind of let that down to be able to be in a happy, healthy relationship, because relationships really are built on trust and communication and being vulnerable. And then adding in the sex and intimacy on top of that makes it a really powerful relationship that can flourish and grow, versus just being one or the other. Because some relationships do kind of grow out of a friendship where you have that trust and communication, but you may not actually have the intimacy and sex piece that you do need in a relationship. You need to be attracted to your partner. But, in this situation, these people tended to be more in relationships that were just sex-based or just have one-night stands. And I'm totally all for one-night stands. I don't want to say that that is a bad thing, but I do think it was a interesting thing for them to kind of say, like, these relationships aren't really fulfilling. It's not like you can't do that. Obviously, they were doing that for a really long time, but it may not be giving you the type of like comfort and fulfillment that you need out of or are wanting out of relationships. And this was helping them get a little bit deeper into what a relationship looks like that could last longer than 4 weeks. So said, I think it was Kells that said his relationships don't usually last more than 4 weeks. So I do think that those workshops were really integral in how the cast was able to move forward throughout this whole journey. And as a sex therapist, like, I loved the bondage. That was amazing. I was so blown away that a show on Netflix would use bondage as a way to show trust and to show, power dynamics through bondage. And that is the whole reason why people in the kink or BDSM communities use bondage, is because it does create this power dynamic, and the person that is tied up is the one that has the power, because they have to say what they're comfortable with. And so I thought that was amazing to bring that up on TV. And then, being a female, or a female identified person, the yoni workshop was amazing. And yoni is a term for vagina that I have learned through my own training to be a sex therapist. And that is like one of the number one things that I tell clients to do is to look at themselves, because a lot of us female identified people that have yonis were never told, to really like look at your parts. Men have parts on the outside, and people that have vaginas, all of our parts are on the inside. So it's usually a lot harder for us to know, excuse me, my voice. It's harder for us to know what that looks like without actually getting down with a mirror and looking at it. And it's so powerful to know what you look like and to have appreciation for that and to have love for that and to have love for your body. So I loved that. I thought that was amazing. I'm going to take a drink of water if that's all right. Hi everyone, I'm doing a cameo because I just watched my video and I totally forgot to put in the fifth workshop that was in the series. I'm so sorry. I only did 4, and as I was watching, I was like, there's a 5th one that I totally forgot about until just now. And that was the one where they wrote all the different words on their bodies that they had been told before that were really painful and shaming. And that, again, was an amazing way to really work through some traumatic experiences and to see yourself differently than just these words. That a lot of these words can create big stories and narratives in our heads that we tell about ourselves, and can create really the big narrative of how we think about ourselves and how we walk through the world and how we relate to other people. And so I thought that was so amazing again, and very influential and impactful for them to work through those things by writing them literally on their bodies and then getting to process that with the other people around them. And that was the final workshop that they did as a big group, to kind of really bring those barriers down. And again, to have to write them on each other was allowing the other person that was writing to understand more about that person that they were writing on, and for more vulnerability and connection to happen and to flourish with the whole cast that was there. So I'm so sorry that I forgot that one. So another thing that I thought was a positive is the sex aspect of this, that even though it's kind of weird to take sex off the table, that I think it did show there is value in it, but not when that's the only thing that's in a relationship, but when it is paired with these other aspects of a relationship of communication, intimacy, and like vulnerability and being able to be comfortable in who you are, then it creates this really powerful connection and relationship that can flourish. So I really did enjoy the fact that, it was really hard for them in the beginning, but then they did get to incorporate some sexual activity or intimacy of kissing and whatnot throughout. I did think masturbation was a little extreme, of being part of the rules that they couldn't masturbate, because, hey, we all do it, hopefully. If you don't, come see me. So I think it's important that we, acknowledge that that is, a good and healthy thing to do, and does not take away from a relationship at all. But that was just part of the show. One of my favorite moments, I also wanted to highlight this, was the bro moment between Sharon and David. And this was when, both Sharon and David kind of had a thing for what was her name? Rhonda, for Rhonda. And David kind of realized through some of his own personal growth that he was going to kind of let Sharon do his thing and pursue Rhonda, but it was more about lifting Sharon up because he had done some really important personal growth on himself. And David was recognizing that and saying, you know, good for you for doing this. I'm really proud of you. And I know that you have deep feelings for Rhonda. So I'm going to step away and let you pursue that because I care about you. And I think that was like one of the most beautiful moments on this show, because men in our culture are taught to, you know, not show emotion, not be intimate with another man in that way. And I just thought that was a huge growth moment for both of them, but especially for David, and kind of saying, you know, this is somebody that I'm really attracted to and I want to pursue, but I see how hard you're working on yourself, and I see that the two of you have a connection. And so I'm going to make the decision for myself to step out of that equation and let you guys figure it out and let you keep doing your personal growth that you need to do. So I thought that was a really, really sweet moment to see two men coming together in that way and sharing that emotional intimacy together in that way. So wanted to highlight that. Kind of last thoughts overall, I thought it was a really good contemporary dating show. Again, had its faults, it had its quirks. It had this big $100,000 prize that they used as kind of positive and negative reinforcement, which is also an interesting thing that goes into psychology too. You know, usually we think of that in like training dogs, but that was, you know, some of the basis for early psychology, and still some of the basis for some of the therapies that we use today. So I thought that was an interesting like reward punishment system. But overall, I thought it was a really good show that went in a different direction. It did have some trashy moments, and don't get me wrong, I love my trashy TV. But overall, I think it went in a direction that I was not expecting. And I think most people that watch this show were not expecting that at all. And I really did feel like all the people that were standing at the end and won the $75,000 at the end were deserving of that and had done a lot of their own personal growth. And I did think it was interesting that they kind of voted off or Lana kind of booted out the people that weren't doing their own growth. But I think that was important too, because it showed like, this is what you guys are here for. And, you know, some people didn't take to the process, and that's okay. But I think the people that did go through the process and really did their own introspection and looking at themselves really came out, you know, probably significantly different people than who they were when they came in. So I felt like it kind of paralleled the therapy process, that, you know, it's not always going to be the same as what it was on Too Hot to Handle, but you come in with your own thoughts and feelings and understandings of the world. And then hopefully through the process of therapy, you learn something different, and you learn something different about yourself, and you build skills to help you communicate better, or to love yourself, or to trust, or to have self-compassion, or whatever it is that you're working on to reduce anxiety, reduce depression, work through trauma, whatever it may be. But coming out on the other side, not completely fixed, because none of us are completely fixed. We are all works in progress. We are all stories that are continuing to be written. But I think overall they came out in a significantly better place than where they started, and met some really cool people and created some meaningful relationships, both friendships, which I think was really important too, that they focused on friendship as well, not just romantic relationships, because building friendship and community is really important too. And I thought that that was something else that they showed, that especially in the workshops, like doing it together, that you were building a community, you were building a tribe of people that could relate to you and you could relate to them and could support you. And I think that was a really beautiful thing to come out of that show as well. Just trying to see if there's anything else that I missed or wanted to say. I think I covered it all. Yeah, but they kind of came out on the other side as understanding their worth as human beings and learning how they wanted to treat others as well as be treated in relationships, both again in friendship and intimate relationships. So overall, I think it was a really positive show. I think it was a fun show to watch. And again, another one to watch, where are they now, and continue to follow. I think those are the best reality shows when you're so invested in those characters, just like Love is Blind, that we all are wanting to know where they're at now and are now following those couples as they individually go off and do their own thing. So I would rate this a thumbs up. Watch it if you haven't. Sorry for the spoilers. I forgot to say that in the beginning, that there are going to be spoilers in this. Hopefully not too many. There's still, plenty to watch. There's drama that I did not cover. So I hope you like this video. I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into some of the things that I like to watch and how this parallels not only dating in quarantine, but kind of what the therapy process could kind of be like, as well as just what is healthy dating versus unhealthy dating. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. If you're seeing this on my website, great. Thank you for being here and thank you for watching. I know this is a longer video than I probably will normally do. You can also find me, I'll just state my website. My website is reclaimingstoriestherapy.com. And that's where you can find out all the information about my services, of me as a therapist. Again, I am a therapist my office is located in Tacoma, Washington, but I am currently quarantined still at home and offering telehealth to all millennials in the greater Tacoma, Seattle area. And I will still be offering telehealth even when quarantine is over for same areas, greater Tacoma, Seattle area, for all my millennials out there that are needing help with dating and sex and relationships, or self-love and compassion, or anxiety around career and finances and all those things. So yes, go to my website to find out any information about that. If you want to find me on other social media platforms, I am on Facebook and Instagram at Reclaiming Stories Therapy. My YouTube channel, if you're seeing this somewhere else, is the Millennial Therapist -RS, just because there's other Millennial Therapist channels out there. So RS is for Reclaiming Stories. And that's me. So take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home if you can, and please reach out if you need some support. All right, take care. Bye-bye.